Happy Wednesday, everybody. Back in your life. Although we're recording this on a Tuesday night, you're going to be listening to this next day. And we're back with another top 5 episode. JD, I'm feeling like I just want to cut you up right now, man. I'm feeling dicey.
Ooh, I'm going to stab you with bullets.
Yeah. Oh, wait. How do you stab people with bullets?
Oh, yeah. That's how in depth we're going because, audience, we're talking about slasher movies.
Top 5 1980s slasher movies. We have 10 years to pick from. We could have stayed with 1 year. We could have went from 80 to 85. We decided to go with the entire decade. So there's a lot to pull from here. Some really good choices, I think. Although there may be some hate from one another here. But before we jump into our list and our countdown here, I do want to thank you guys for hitting the download button on today's podcast. And if you want to subscribe and throw us a little love, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Of course, if you're watching this live on YouTube, what's up, guys? Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you turn on the bell notification so every time we go live, even if it's last minute and we don't promote it at all, you'll know about it because it's going to send you a notification on your device that we're live and you can stare at these faces. And I even have lights now. So here's old me. Here's new me.
Ooh, little deadlights action, calling Pennywise.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome, man. Well, you ready to get to it?
I say heck yeah. Let's slice and dice, mother effer.
All right, here we go. So I'm going to let you start us off, JD. What is your number 5 pick for our top 5 1980s slasher movies?
So I'm obviously starting right at the top tip of 1980s with a little known Canadian slasher film in our archives, starring who else but Jamie Lee Curtis and Leslie Nielsen himself, the Beast from the East, Prom Night.
Wow. Coming in freaking hot right off the bat, man.
Oh, hell yeah. That's how I roll it.
I love it. I own this movie.
I don't doubt that for a moment. Like, why would you not own this movie? Audience, who else? Shout out to, if you're listening now or listening later, do you also own this movie? And how does it stack up against the remake?
That's a good question. I actually enjoy the remake. I know it got a little bit of hate because, I mean, that's what people do nowadays. They just hate on films. But, yeah, I don't mind the remake at all. But that original, Jamie Lee Curtis, yeah, you know how I feel about the JLC. So, of course, I enjoyed this one.
It's well documented, your feelings of, as we now are calling her, JLC.
Yeah, that's a thing.
It's done deal.
Totally a thing. Okay, so nice pick with number 1. I'm loving that. That's actually not on my list.
Oof.
So
near miss.
Yeah, I know. Here we go. She does have a great scream. The Scream Queen. Shout out to the Quad Father. Love it. Now let's go ahead and move over to my pick. So I am in the year 1983. This is a horror slasher movie. I think this movie really came out in like the heyday of slasher movies, and it's kind of probably best known for the twist at the end of the movie. JD, I think you know this writer and director pretty well. He may or may not have kicked you out of a discussion at some point. And it's about Angela Baker, who is a shy, traumatized young girl, and she's sent to summer camp with her cousin. And shortly after her arrival, anyone with sinister or less than honorable intentions gets their comeuppance. That's the tag of the movie, and the movie is Sleepaway Camp. Number 5. You introduced me to this movie, actually, I want to say, at your bachelor party. So what year would that have been?
2008?
There
2007, somewhere in there?
Okay. So obviously I kind of caught on to this movie pretty late, but it's now one of my favorites. And it's in our archives with Brian from the Terrible Terror podcast.
You know what, Kyle? I won't say a whole lot because it may very heavily be appearing on my list soon.
Okay.
But I'm so happy for your inclusion.
I love it. And just to kind of give you a little insight into it, and we talked a lot about this in the full review that we did with Sleepaway Camp. So if you want more insight into it, there's a lot more on that episode. But the movie was shot in 5 weeks in the September of 1982, and they only had a $350,000 budget. So although it didn't have the success of a movie like Halloween that had a very similar budget, it's gone on to be quite a cult classic that was whipped up pretty quickly.
It is, and you can catch Star Felissa Rose at every horror con. Look her up on Twitter. She's very loving and interactive with fans. So send, if you've seen the movie, your love to her. If you're seeing it for the first time, pass on your thoughts, and she will respond to you and interact with you, which is awesome. Like, I love the horror community for that reason.
I'm looking at her IMDb right now. She has, hold on, there's a lot of them.
That's what she said.
23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. She has like, I mean, it's just under 40 movies in development or in post-production right now. That is insane.
Very busy woman.
You can catch her, I mean, almost anywhere. So, yeah. Here we go. Let's go ahead and keep on keeping on, man. Number 4, JD, what do you have?
So I really feel like this is a movie, Kyle, that I should have introduced you to. I don't think it's going to be on your list. It's a slasher movie. It's described as a science fiction comedy horror, but at the heart of it, it's a slasher movie. It's awesome. It's silly. It's got every aspect that you would need to set up a horror movie from the 80s. This is 1986's Chopping Mall.
Ooh, I like it. That's a deep cut right there.
That is a deep cut. It's an awesome movie. It's so ridiculous. Like, it's just these security robots turning manacle and killing teenage employees inside a shopping mall after dark. It's just everything that the 80s can deliver, and they do. It's a hell of a watch. So this is another one. Obviously, horror fans, you probably are quite familiar with Prom Night and Sleepaway Camp. Chopping Mall might be a little bit under your radar. Not saying that I'm pretentious or anything, because it's a very well-known movie, but hell yeah, Chopping Mall.
Okay. Chopping Mall is a movie that I believe I watched in college from Family Video as a rental. One of those that had like a great VHS or DVD box. Probably would have been DVD, I guess. But it's a solid movie. I got to be honest, I haven't watched it in a long time. I feel like next time I see it pop up on Amazon Prime or one of those streaming services, I need to give it a second look-see.
Yes, you do.
So, another comment here. JD, care to address?
What? Sleepaway Camp? No strippers at the bachelor party? Is he still married? Well, Quadfather, yeah, duh.
Of course.
And we didn't say that there wasn't strippers at the bachelor party. We just said that we enjoyed Sleepaway Camp.
That's true. Who knows what happened? We can't say anything. And still married. So it worked out, huh?
Oh, that's the American dream, is it not?
There you go. Well, let's get to my number 4 pick here, man. So we are, in the year 1984. It is a movie that is based upon characters created by one Victor Miller, who is a friend of JD, dare I say, an email friend. And this is actually the 4th installment in the film's franchise. And after being mortally wounded and taken to the morgue, Jason Voorhees revives and embarks on a killing spree as he makes his way back to his home at Camp Crystal Lake. It's our movie of the month with my number 4 pick, Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I'm gonna say it right now. I think Friday the 13th, Part 4 is might be my favorite out of all the Friday the 13th movies.
Okay, that's a bold statement, Cotton, and let's see how that pans out for you.
I just
But
watched Dodgeball not too long ago.
good
Well done.
man, good man. That's why we're friends.
ESPN 8, the Ocho.
No, that's a great pick. Again, I won't say much because we have a lot to discuss about this film. We have a special guest that appeared on, if you've not watched our Shooting the Manure episode, that will be joining us from Married People Watching Movies.
Right. Yep.
So,
Married People Watching Movies. You got it, man. So
yeah, that smile.
yeah. Now, obviously this movie's fantastic. We're going to talk a lot more about it probably in about a week, 9 days, somewhere in there before the end of the month. And yeah, we'll have a lot more to say. So we won't say too much at this point. Now, let's keep on going, JD. Number 3 pick. What do you have, man?
So I will say it was very difficult to etch out number 1, number 2, and number 3. And at any given time, I could have said 3 was 1 and 2 was 3 and 1 was, but I had to be decisive. And I had to go with number 3 is, in terms of franchises, probably my number 1 favorite when we're talking about the 80s killers and what Wes Craven created with A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it has to be included and talked about because it's hands down. There's Halloween is awesome. Friday the 13th is awesome. Nightmare on Elm Street is childhood for me.
I can't say too much about this pick, but I will tell you this. I love the pick. I think it's a fantastic movie in our archives, by the way, where we break it down scene by scene. But yeah, I think it's definitely a movie. If you haven't watched it in a long time, I feel like it holds up pretty nice for being a movie as old as it is. I mean, it's coming up on 40 years here pretty soon.
Oh my gosh, so are we.
That's true.
But no, I mean, there's some goofy scenes in there, like the spaghetti arms scene.
Yeah,
is always a classic. But at the end of the day, it holds up. It's so original. It's so applicable to every nightmare that every one of us has ever had, and we wake up and we say, "What?"
Exactly. All right, man. Well, let's keep chucking along because I can't say too much about Nightmare on Elm Street, but I will say a lot more about my number 3 pick. I did pull a little trickery on you here. My number 3 pick is from the year 1980, and it's about a high school senior prom and a mass killer who's stalking 4 teenagers. I did throw it in there. Prom Night is my number 3 pick. Of course, like you mentioned earlier, Leslie Nielsen, Jamie Lee Curtis, JLC. Man, it's just fantastic. And the movie, of course, the last time I saw it, I could feel that it was just it's getting dated for sure. But it's still like the original, and you got to pay respect to it, and I love it, and I'll continue to watch it for years to come.
But I think, and I didn't mention this earlier when I was talking about it, but I think that what you're getting at is we have a slice of life. We've got this American dream of what it was like to go to prom in 1980, which I've not experienced. So it's like a time capsule. And There just happens to be a shit ton of murder.
Ton of murder. Lots of people getting capped in that movie.
And that's fine by me. I'm totally okay with that. I mean, the guy in his van with the scene where he goes, and love that scene.
Yeah, and it did fairly well at the U.S. box office. I think it ended up taking in $15 million. So, and I mean, the movie, I think they made it for $1 million Canadian. So, I mean, it was a pretty inexpensive film to make, and they did pretty well with it. I'm actually surprised they didn't do more at the end of the day.
I'm glad they didn't. Prom night. How many prom night? Prom night 17. Like, is there like
Like Jaws 17,
a
Back to the
right?
Future 2.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, like you're saying, like it's such a great concept and topic, but it needs to exist as a one-off. The same way in my favorite horror movie of all time, The Strangers, didn't need a sequel because the concept just this is solid.
Yeah, at some point we're gonna definitely cover Strangers because we both have a real love for that movie, and we'll have to talk about the sequel, which I didn't hate it, but it didn't need to be made at the end of the
Right.
day.
It's like, is there going to be a Forrest Gump 2?
Hmm. Well, stupid is as stupid does.
Well, that's
I,
Kyle's first tattoo.
I mean, I always want to kind of catch up with characters and kind of see, where they end up at the end of the day. But I mean, do you really need to see it play out? You want to, but yeah,
No, but at the same time, go back in our archives and check out That Thing You Do, which I love the way that they ended that movie by showing us where the characters went.
right.
And to me, that's like such a quality payoff. It's so just like, ah.
I love it. All right, man. Number 2 pick. What do you have?
So my number 2 pick is from 1981. And it's a summer camp film. It's a Harvey Weinstein film.
Boo.
Oh, it's a George Costanza film. It's The Burning.
The Burning. Wow.
Jason Alexander, Fisher Stevens. It's just this ridiculous, like, it's so cozy, but at the same time, so epic.
Right.
And it's a sad story of a $1.5 million budget against a $700,000 box office. But that's not telling to just how amazing the legacy of a movie like The Burning is.
Right.
And it's in the mold of everything that you can expect and want enjoyably from a 1981 slasher film.
When you said enjoyably, a little bit of Walken started to come out on that word.
Oh, enjoyably.
I like that it kind of presents itself from time to time when you say
Yeah.
words. I feel like you do the voice more than you lead on.
Yeah. These in a Russian voice. I speak fluent Russian.
Yikes. Where'd that come from?
It comes from Moscow.
Nice. All right, man. Well, let's get to my number 2 pick, and then we'll wrap this thing up with our number 1. So I am heading to the year 1988 for one of my favorite movies of all time, especially slasher movies. So this movie is about a kid and his doll. And you knew it had to be on this list, but yeah, a single mom, she does whatever she can to get that sought after doll for her son's birthday, only to discover it's a possessed soul of a serial killer named Charles Lee Ray, aka Chucky. He's your friend to the end, JD. Child's Play at number 2. What do you think, man?
It's fantastic, and it was hard to not include on my list. The conversation that we had over the first movie, like a year ago?
Right.
And oh my gosh, Quadfather MFT, yes, Child's Play is coming to this list. Boom, it's happened.
Yeah, to hold off on posting that one. So, yeah, no, man, it's a fantastic movie. The way that this film series kicks off with Child's Play, and the way that it pretty much haunted me for years, because I saw this when I was like 4 years old. And I was at my buddy's house. We were eating a Domino's pizza, and I was sitting on the floor watching Child's Play, and I was absolutely horrified. It's for years, like if I was down in the basement, as soon as I shut the light off, I sprinted up the stairs. I did it until I was
Hmm.
like 15 years old
Yeah,
because
no,
I
I
was always
remember.
afraid.
You did that in college too,
You didn't have to go there.
but I did.
Good man. It doesn't sound like this one's on your list, though. I'm a little surprised. I thought you were a bigger fan of Child's Play. I'm not gonna lie.
It was hard to not, and so it is, audience, not on my list. It was hard to not include, but I remember because you were over at my house when we watched it, and I think I fell asleep during it.
Mm, maybe it didn't hold up as well for you, huh?
I think we need to dive into the second one
Okay.
because I've
Okay.
got fonder memories of seeing. I want to say I probably saw the second one first,
Yeah.
like on TV, and then was like, oh, jump back. It's like Aliens versus Alien. Like I know I saw Aliens first,
Right.
and then was like, oh my god, there's a number one to this movie. Like I have to catch this out. And but
Real quick, and we'll move on from Child's Play. Do you wish that they would stop going back to the well with Child's Play and just kind of leave it alone?
I want to say yes, but only if they stop doing it dirty. Like do it right. Like they keep every time any horror franchise goes back to the well, and we can talk about Spiral. I don't know if you checked out Spiral yet.
I did you?
I did not, but I've
Okay.
read a lot about it. So I'm
Okay. I've
very
read nothing. I'm planning on going sometime this weekend because
okay.
I've heard that it's like a fresh take on it and it's well done. I'm interested.
As am I.
Okay.
I think minus pandemic, I would probably have seen it already.
Me too. Yeah.
But obviously, there's not many movie theaters that are even open anymore that are showing moving pictures. But the point being, and I was reading an article by Boozman that was
Yeah.
talking about where they go from Spiral. Do they do Saw? Is Spiral Saw 9? Do they do a Saw 9? Is there a Spiral 2? The franchise is alive and kicking, and I
Hmm.
don't think they necessarily know what they want to do with it yet. And they're sort of waiting to see the numbers, which, given pandemic, I think decent.
Yeah. Let me actually pull up the official numbers on Box Office Mojo. See how it did. Did 8.8 million opening weekend. That's pretty solid for the amount of screens they're in.
Yeah.
Because I mean they're in 2,800 theaters, but like I know most of the country, like here in Indiana, it's only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's
Mhm.
the only time you can go watch the movie. So, I mean, and it's limited times too. It's like noon, 2, 4, 7, and that's it. There's no like 10 o'clock show like they normally have. So, I mean, it's playing a lot less. So I think like the average view per screen is doing really well for Spiral.
Yeah. And so with that being said, I do enjoy a fresh take on it, and I want to see Spiral. So, audience, if you've seen it, tweet us your thoughts, love, hate,
Yeah.
and kick us in the butt because we need to watch it.
Okay. All right, man. Let's get to the final pick. So you started with Prom Night as your number 5 choice, and then you moved into Chopping Mall. Like I said, deep cut, no pun intended. Your third pick was A Nightmare on Elm Street. Number 2 was The Burning. Number 1 pick, man. What do you have?
You know what it is.
I kind of think I have an idea, but I want to hear from you.
Sleepaway Camp. It has to be. I so I love Sleepaway Camp for a number of reasons, and I was first introduced to Sleepaway Camp, and this is all covered on episode in our archives. Also, hi Dave, we're talking about our archives.
Hmm.
Dave loves our archives, and he loves our big what? Um, hmm? He's not watching live,
Mm-mm.
but he does appreciate the shoutouts.
Not a fan
Um,
of YouTube. Nope.
So I was first introduced to Sleepaway Camp 2 in college, and then much like we were talking about the other movies where you get into it in reverse, and then I watched Sleepaway Camp 1 and made it a mission to show everybody that I possibly could Sleepaway Camp
Yeah.
because it's a very great movie. It's very interesting and very not archaic, but another slice of life of what America was in the time of sleepaway camps.
Hmm.
And I don't know that those exist anymore. Would you send your children to a no? You're shaking your head already.
It would depend. It would depend on how long they were going for, where it was at, and who is running it. Would depend on if I would send him. I would want him to experience some of that stuff, but just in a safe environment.
Without a crazed serial killer on the
Right.
loose.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it totally makes total sense. And that's what I think the comedy, the clothing, the music, the acting, everything that Sleepaway Camp has to offer. Audience, if you've not seen it, check out our episode in the archive. Catch up on Kyle's pick as it was on his list. But I mean, this is a winner through and through.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, I think you got a really solid list there, and let's get to my pick, and then we'll close up the show here. So I started with Sleepaway Camp was my number 5. Number 4 was Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Of course, it was not the final chapter. Number 3, Prom Night. Number 2 was Child's Play, and my number 1 pick, also on your list. This narrows it down a little bit for you. It is a supernatural. Wow, look at me mispronouncing words. Supernatural slasher film, written and directed by the late great Wes Craven. It's the first installment of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and it stars Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, Robert Englund, and a young Johnny Depp making his film debut, A Nightmare on Elm Street. That's my top movie, man, and it did really well. This movie has kind of stood the test of time, and it did really really well at the box office as well. So it's just, I mean, it's a movie that has to be talked about.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad, I'm proud of myself for bringing it up, but even more proud for you including it at number 1 because, like I said, my top 3 were interchangeable to the last second. It could have been any one of them, and I'm so fond of this film.
Right. Absolutely, man. It's a fantastic movie, and I mean, it really does. It holds up pretty well. I mean, like you talked about, there's a few things like with the spaghetti arms, aka the Jim Carrey arms, that are just a little corny that don't hold up. But I mean, there's so many awesome like practical effects in this movie, and it's a mind fuck. Like when I was watching a recent interview with Robert Englund, he was talking about like how he came up with the voice, and like it was just like some of the things that he put behind it. Like none of it was scripted out. It was all stuff that just kind of came off the cuff for him, and they just let him run with it. And I think that's why it does so well, is because some of it was organic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. And Robert Englund's a gem.
Super underrated.
Yeah, he's
very talented guy.
His part in Urban Legends alone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Give that guy an award.
In fact, that was the podcast is the reason I saw that interview with him, and they talked about that is one of the actors was in Urban Legend with him, and he brought him on to talk about the role. It's Michael Rosenbaum, and he has a great podcast as well. So, but he had him on for like an hour and got into his entire career.
Nice.
So, very cool guy. But that's it, man. My only movie that was on my list that at one point I moved off of the list was Halloween 2. So that was the only one that I was kind of debating back and forth. Ultimately, I really like Halloween 2, but there were some other movies that I watch more often than Halloween 2.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, this was such a competitive list because, like you talked about earlier, 1980s slashers is such a big window.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so difficult to not include. I mean, I could have done a top 5 movie 1980s slashers, and they all been Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Easily.
Yeah, Friday the 13th movies. Like, I mean, there's so many genres where you could just go down the list and go, I like this one. 1, 4, 2.
Yeah.
Put them in order.
The one movie that I wanted to bring up that didn't make my list, that is not a slasher movie, but hate me if you will, it's a great horror movie from the 1980s, The Stuff.
Okay. That is one I'm not familiar with. I'd have to check that one out.
It's basically like Nickelodeon Gak that kills you.
Nice.
So like Fluffernutter sandwiches, but like it's just I saw it as a kid and I was so confused. I had no idea what was going on. It was just the stuff that kills you. And then I watched it as an adult, and I actually got to interview the director at one point and have a signed poster from him just hanging out in my closet. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I love the stuff.
Well, I think this has been great, man. You know, we covered top 5 90s slasher movies. Now we've done the 80s. I mean, at some point we're going to have to get into the 2000s as well and get into that year. But man, this has been a great episode. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you subscribe right here on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, subscribe there. Drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Help us grow this thing. And we'll be back in a couple days with another top 5 episode. We're going to be doing the top 5 songs from the year 1984. I've got my list ready to go. I think there's a couple good ones in there. Probably very predictable, though, as you're normally pretty good at doing with my music taste. Lucky for you, no early November existed in the 80s, so we should be clear of that. But I'm looking forward to it, man. Any last words, JD, before we sign off here?
No, I again echo thank you, audience. Continue to watch, to listen, and engage with us. Let us know what you think. If you think Kyle's picks suck, obviously most people agree. If you think my picks suck, obviously Kyle agrees. But I mean, we draw from just that interaction between you all. So let us know what you think. Share your favorites.
Okay, let's hear them. Shoot us over at Back in Time Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Let us know what your picks are. But thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys in a couple days. See ya.